We're going to hear now from Sharon, who has agreed to speak openly with Morning Focus about a very difficult and ongoing situation in her life. Sharon has experienced periods of isolation, serious health challenges, and what she describes as escalating safety concerns while living in her local community. Indeed, she says she is on the verge of homelessness after what she describes as being terrorised by a group of men. It's a sensitive conversation about personal well-being, fear and the struggle to find appropriate support. So I sat down for a conversation with Sharon earlier. Here's how it went. Sharon, thank you so much for coming in this morning to speak with us.
Thank you for having me.
You were living in one location and before you moved into this log cabin at the back of, I believe, your parents' property. Can you give us a sense of the timeline and what led to each move?
The first location I was in, I moved from there to the log cabin on my parents' property with my husband, and we lived there for the last 5 years. Up until February I lived there by myself.
Moving into the log cabin, what led to that decision, or is that something you would rather not go into?
Well, the log cabin led to the rent crisis and having to move out of my first accommodation because the property was being sold. My husband gave me no choice. The marriage wasn't great and he gave me an ultimatum. It was to live in my car with my cats or live on the streets or go home, even though I was recently married. So I reached out to my mother, my father. They helped me, but we both moved to the cabin.
Okay, he didn't really give you particularly fantastic options, to say the least of it. What happened from that point, Sharon? At what point did things begin to feel unsafe for you, and how did that sense of danger develop over time?
When my husband was there, obviously I felt safe. When my family was around, I felt safe. At night time, when my husband worked nights and wasn't home late, I often had what I would call a stalker around my cabin. This would continue throughout the whole 5 years that I was there. I was well aware of him, but I was previously well aware of him most of my life. But just because I had moved back, it become aware, obviously, to that person that I was in the area. My husband at times did go out when we had presence around the cabin, but could never catch anybody. But that particular person has constantly been of a presence around the cabin.
And, when you say presence, was this person, were they, knocking on your door, throwing rocks through windows, or were they just being there to let you know they were there, or were they actually not trying to let you know they were there? How was it? Well,
this particular person is one person who I thought was always the one person until the behaviour changed and the pattern of behaviour changed. This person would be at the back of the cabin where there's no windows, there's no doors. There's only 2 windows to one side and all the front is windows, and these windows are long. They're actually emergency doors should you need to vacate in an emergency. He would come to the back of the cabin from the property behind, come to the side of the cabin and watch me at the window, and I would become aware that he was there because the shadow on the floor beneath the couch, it would reflect. So it would catch my eye from where I would sit. He would crouch down and just watch me. I think he thought I didn't know he was there, but I'm highly intuitive, so I was very well aware he was there. I didn't have cameras. My husband wasn't going to buy cameras and put cameras up, and I don't think my family would have wanted cameras up either. I tried several times to catch him on my phone, but any time I moved, he would move.
So you did actually go out to try and confront this person?
I did.
And how often was this happening, Sharon? Was it a daily occurrence? Or was it not daily but quite regular? Or?
A lot of Sundays, late afternoons, around 4 o'clock, and I would time it kind of like when my family would sit down to have their dinner, and I would be on my own there on a Sunday when my husband was there because he'd go to play golf. And so I'd have 3 or 4 hours there by myself. Other times it was at night when it would get dark. Sometimes even around 6 as it would just start to turn dark. I would see him, I'd be aware of him. Sometimes I would hear him, he would kick the keg at the back, the keg of gas at the back of the cabin. I had a light put in on the top right of the cabin when things started to elevate, but prior to that he would make his way to the front where there's an apple tree. He would slouch down and just look in to where there was a TV. And sometimes, like often, I would doze off on the couch and I'd wake up with a fright sudden, and I would just see the side of his face looking at me from the window. Sorry.
I even to be able to try and fall asleep, you must have been constantly watching your back, or
it became like that. Yeah. I used to get a lot of stray cats, and I would feed stray cats, and I would go out with hot water bottles when weather was cold, because I had a fully insulated dog hut that was kitted out for cats just to keep them warm, and I fed them if they were hungry. And I would sit out at night time because I love the moon. I'm a moon person, and have a cuppa. I had to stop doing that. I just felt very unsafe by myself, even to sit out with the cats. So I started to bring 2 stray cats in at night because it felt safer to do so, even though it made it more stressful for me and my house cats. For me, it was just to keep them warm, and because I'm an animal person. But in the early mornings, like even around 10 o'clock, I would go out, sit, have a cup of coffee. I stopped doing that because on one particular morning I went out and I'd gone to, there was just like a little fence around the cabin, a very small area, but it's concrete with a little bit of grass area. And I'd gone out to the bin, and I'd come back and I heard this voice, hello, hello, hello. And I recognised the voice. I knew it was the guy that I called the stalker. I went straight inside and locked the door. It was just the fact that I knew he was behind the cabin and I was on my own at that point, because my husband was gone to work.
You mentioned, Sharon, that at some point it went from one person, this person, to a group of people, a group of men. How did this develop? Were items being moved? What was happening?
What we did discover, my husband discovered actually, that there's 2 long windows in the bedroom which faces the front. One of them looked like it had been pushed in at some stage, maybe possibly when we were gone kayaking. It would have been done during the summer. 2 clips were broken, so it was a window I never left open. I kept it closed constantly. After I'd ended my marriage in February, I had like a table and 2 chairs outside the 2 windows. I started to pull them nearer to that particular window, but I would link them in every night. So for me, that window was the most vulnerable, because all the other windows, you kind of couldn't access them due to furniture in the rest of the cabin. For me, it was just to, if somebody was about, if they tried to move them, I would hear, just to be able to get up, act, make a call if I needed to. So I started to get up in the mornings, go out, feed the cats, open up. I have a cat run that's secured from the inside. You can't open it from the outside unless I have it unlocked on the inside. And that's a safe space for me outside my front door, so it made the front doors more secure. When I would go out, let the cats out, open up the cat run, the tables and chairs were all unlinked, moved. Now this, I didn't take much notice the first time, but the second time I did, and this would take place on a Wednesday and a Thursday. So it was being done on a Wednesday night and a Thursday night. And this went on for weeks and weeks. It was like, I knew they were sending me a message, kind of.
And did this message, the importance or the seriousness of it, change just before Christmas? You've used the word, they terrorised you. So what happened before Christmas?
So what I thought was just this one particular person. It's hard to say whether he's involved with the others or if it's 2 separate things going on that just seemed to come together. Obviously, I was alone from February in the cabin. I had been living there. I had felt okay. I had relatively safe going to bed at night. I wasn't panicked. Then, the end of October leading into November, there was a change in pattern, change in behaviour, and I felt that this particular person had upped his kind of antics, I suppose, and I felt more threatened that actually he has intention here to possibly harm me, possibly break in. And I did fear that it's like an infatuation, I suppose, with this person. So I did fear physically for my safety. When things were being moved, and at night time, I'd wake up and I'd see a shadow of a tall man past my curtains, my windows. Like, it was very clear because the moon shines. You can't but see that it's a tall man. And it fitted his description, how my body reacted intuitively, how I felt. Because this is someone I've been aware of for years. So I knew when it was him and when it wasn't him.
Sharon, this would have serious impact on anyone's mental health, physical health, or psyche, regardless of the fact that, you know, you already have a medical situation. Can you just briefly describe what this condition is, how it affects you on a daily basis, and what's just the overall impact of this situation?
So POTS for me literally started where I was driving to my reflexology business, and on the way in the car I just lost power in my body. I felt like a bleed effect in the back of my head, numbness, tingling, left-sided weakness, and I felt I had no power in my left leg. My husband came, met me, took me to UHL. I was brought into the stroke unit where they treated me for TIA, and it was 3 or 4 months later they diagnosed me because I kept being referred back having the same type of symptoms, and it was confirmed then by tilt table test in 2023 that I had POTS syndrome. I was left very much to holistically treat myself. I didn't get any support medically or anything at home. In my home, nobody came in to help me. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't sit up straight. I could never eat a full meal. I could never sit at a table. I had to be reclined. And I had a lot of dizziness, fainting. I would fall if I tried to walk. I was walking with sticks for a couple of years. It's only since February that I started to walk without sticks. I was very strong-minded in healing. I believed everything I'd researched, everything that the doctors told me, everything that POTS groups, support groups were telling me, none of it was working for me. For me, it was the sea trying to shock my heart back into rhythm, cold water effect, and that really did help. I suppose, like for me, I get very, very low blood pressure, and then my heart rate goes into the 200s. Like it can go very high, and that's where I lose power and I can collapse, and that's when I'm taken to hospital. It affects everything really. Your vision can go. I have pretty much recovered the strength on my left side of my body, but I did, like every day I worked on my body because I believe in muscle memory and try to retrain my body, and I would use dumbbells, 6 kgs, you know, trying to balance my body, trying to kind of even the imbalance, I suppose, when I walked.
So you're clearly dealing with a huge amount, never mind everything else that's going on, Sharon. And did you approach Gardaí for help? Any other organisations? If so, what kind of response did you receive?
I reached out to a lot of places. Like when I was diagnosed and sent home from the hospital, I was told that, you know, a nurse will come to see you and all these things, and none of those happened. And when I made all those calls, they were dead ends. Nobody ever came. Anything I bought to help me, I paid for myself, like a particular Fitbit, which I stopped wearing because I felt I was being too conscious of the heart rate and it wasn't helping. A particular treadmill, weights, everything I fully invested in myself. I didn't rely on doctors. At times I felt even my own GPs, because I use a few, whoever's available I will take. I felt, though they understand it on paper, to actually live with it, they don't really grasp it. But things are moving on with research, and you know, the more people that have it now, like when I joined the group there was like 600, there's now a few thousand people. And
what about Gardaí? Surely you went to them with this situation outside your cabin.
As the table and chairs thing was escalating, and hearing someone around my cabin, and they would tip the cabin, you know, knock the cabin, and you'd hear whispering a voice obviously. I just became very uneasy. I became frightened. I first reached out to my father, and I asked my father, like, would he help me move something that was very heavy to put at that window so that person could no longer crouch down and watch me. I wanted to make it difficult for him, that he had to come to the light, if you know what I mean, that he couldn't hide in the dark. And my father kind of got mad at me and said, oh, why would a married man with kids want anything to do with you? It's in your head. There's nobody coming. And that was insulting to me, and that made me quite emotional.
Did you receive a better response from Gardaí?
I suppose my father did put in the light, but it was a swivel light. So these men used to move the light. So that wasn't helpful, and it was too low that anyone could access the light. But I reached out to Gardaí because I did feel threatened. And when I called Gardaí, I spoke to a nice guard at the time, and he said to me, listen, keep a log. If you have any issue, give us a ring. And, I felt okay with that. But then I suppose things started to escalate. I was now seeing more people around my cabin at night. It wasn't just one tall person, it was people different heights and different ages, because I could hear voices. And I could hear them whispering. I could smell people smoking, because I don't smoke. It was quite clear they were smoking cigarettes. Often they called me a stupid bitch. I never reacted. I stayed quiet, but I was panicked. Like I was scared on the inside. And
have Gardaí looked into this? Is there an investigation? Or
the 3 weeks leading up to Christmas, that's when things got really out of hand. And I knew I was going to need Garda help. I was afraid to ring. People make you doubt yourself, because I suppose I'm separated, I'm living by myself. I don't have a TV because I'd rather read books. I'm a quiet person. I like peacefulness and stuff. I'm spiritual, and not everybody agrees with that. I felt like questionable, that people were going to question mentally where I was at, and I didn't feel I could go back to my parents and tell them the further kind of reoccurrences of what was going on around the cabin.
Okay, so you didn't go approach them, but did you detail the up-to-date developments to Gardaí, and what have they said to you?
So I started to keep a log for myself, and because I had POTS syndrome, I found writing was keeping my blood pressure and heart rate on an even keel, but to try and concentrate that I wouldn't faint or pass out with the panic and the worry. So I was keeping a log for 3 weeks, up until the last week leading to Christmas. On the 9th, 10th, leading into the 11th of December, things really escalated in the cabin, to the point that I did not feel safe, that I had to call Gardaí. What I experienced on the inside was terrifying. I could tell there was 4 people outside, but there was also a van, because they left in a van, and the van took off on a straight, and they thumped the van as they left on the early hours of the 11th. I rang the guards. I had 3 visits from male guards, 3 different sets of guards that came in a pair. And the first pair were nice. They said they would do a patrol of the area. They said, call us if you have any trouble. And I felt okay. But when the guards came, they were well gone. Then the second guards came, and the second guards... they went up to my parents to try and talk to them, and I felt that's not going to help me, because my parents are going to say I'm imagining it, that they think it's just this stalker guy, when in fact things were getting worse, and I wasn't telling them or updating them, so they weren't really aware of what was going on in the last 3 days in the cabin.
So as of now, our Gardaí are looking into this? Is it going any further?
When the last set of guards came, I felt very insulted. I'm very highly intuitive. I'm very with it. But this one particular guard said, you should talk to your doctor. I felt very insulted, not taken seriously. And I said, look, you're the 3rd set that's come here. None of you want to take the logbook. None of you want to look at the videos. You're not listening to me. You're not taking me seriously. This isn't in my head. This is actually really happening to me. And... they left. They just said they'll keep doing patrols. And one guard actually said to me, well, you have a boiler over there, what you're seeing and hearing is just the boiler, which would be at my sister's house. Boiler wasn't on. My own boiler wasn't on. I had no heat on. They left, and after they left a short while, there was peace, there was quiet. I thought maybe they were gone for good this time, but they didn't. They came back, but they came back in force. They came back, and this is where it got terrifying for me, because I saw equipment I'd never seen before. I started to shine the torch at them when they would start doing stuff. I started to get a little bit ballsy maybe, but I was scared. Because I had all my windows blocked off, hoping that they couldn't see me, but actually they could see everything. They could see exactly where I was inside the cabin, because they were able to direct each other. She's in the bedroom, she's at the kitchen, she's at the table. So they could see.
So this is just continuing, and where are things at now? Are you still in this cabin, Sharon, or have you gotten away from there?
I had to leave that cabin because... in my videos, you'll hear the impact of the noise that they were making. the impact of them going through the electrics, being in the roof area, being in underneath in the floor. They had laser equipment. They had what appears to be night vision goggles, but they also had this thing shoved in, and this was shoved in very near to where I sit on my couch, but it was sort of behind me in the centre of the floor. And first of all, I heard ocean. I heard it's almost like the sound of someone walking by the sea. I didn't take much notice at first, and I picked up my phone. There was nothing open on my phone at this stage. And then I heard a conversation I had with a friend on my phone a couple of days prior being played. Now I heard it. I know it was there, but I didn't react. I pretended like I wasn't panicked by it. And then I heard a hand saw, a plastic bag. It was a light duty black refuse bag is what I would describe it to be. I heard 2 canisters fall. I heard metal fall at the back of my cabin on the back left hand corner. The sawing took place under my sink in that area. I could feel that there was a little bit of wind, but I could feel that the metal sheeting on the roof over the sink area, it was like moving. I could hear and see the loop going around in my electrics. And then I heard this like a Bunsen burner effect. And then there was a hiss. And it was happening ever so often.
So this is clearly a situation that can't continue. But are you still at this cabin? Have you gotten out of there?
No,
where are you now?
I had to leave the cabin. I rang everybody. I even confronted them through the wall of my cabin. I even went outside the cabin on the Saturday the 11th and to try and ask them to apologise, to go away, leave me in peace. And one man just said, don't answer her. I rang everybody on my contacts, contacted everybody. Could anyone come and help me? I just needed to get out. I just needed to feel safe, me and my 3 cats.
And you are living with a family at the moment, but they're in the process of moving, and you'll find yourself with no place to stay soon. So are you looking for help in that regard? Yeah.
So basically when I came to my current location, I reached out to Citizens Advice, which were fantastic. They gave the time, the energy. They were fantastic in their information in where to send me. So I first reached out to Women's Aid. Women's Aid put me back to another haven, which couldn't help because they felt the situation was more criminal than domestic. Then I was referred to HAT. They kept telling me to go back, and I kept saying I can't go back. It's not safe.
So just to finish then, are you, if anyone has a solution for you in terms of accommodation, is that something you would welcome?
Absolutely, because I'm homeless. I'm desperate really for a place to live, because the people I'm with, they don't have the space, they're downsizing, and I'm very grateful to them to have taken me in over Christmas, because I don't know where I would have been.
Well, look, we will stay in touch with you on this, and if anyone gets in touch with an offer of accommodation or a solution, we'll connect them with you. Sharon, we really appreciate you coming in this morning to share your story, a very difficult one to share quite clearly. Thank you very much for coming into studio.
Thank you for having me.
And that was Sharon, who I spoke with earlier on. And if you have any views to send in relation to my conversation with Sharon, or indeed if you can help her out on the accommodation front, please do get in touch. It's 0818 400 964 to call Morning Focus, or you can text or WhatsApp us on 086 1800 964.